The night I decided to run away from home. I was 17 years old, angry, exhausted and convinced that nobody in my family understood me. I had packed a small backpack with 2 shirts, a pair of jeans, some cash, and the old phone my mother had given me. I waited until everyone was asleep, quietly opened the front door and stepped outside.
I thought leaving would finally make me free.
I was wrong for years. I had believed my mother was the reason I felt trapped. She always asked where I was going, who I was meeting, when I would come home, and whether I had eaten at the time. Those questions felt like chains. I didn't understand that every question came from fear, not control. That night, I walked several blocks through empty streets. The farther I got from home, the more confident I became. I imagined a new life where nobody could tell me what to do. Then my phone vibrated. It was a message from Mom. "Wherever you are, please be careful. I love you." I stared at the screen but didn't reply. A few minutes later, another message arrived. "You don't have to come home tonight. If you aren't ready, just let me know you're safe." That message stopped me. How did she know I hadn't told anyone I was leaving? I switched off my phone and kept walking. By sunrise, I was sitting at a small bus station trying to decide where to go. Next, my anger had begun to disappear. Replaced by fear, I had very little money and no real plan. Then I saw my mother's car. She wasn't driving toward me. She was parked across the street. My heart sank. I stood up immediately, ready to run again, but she didn't chase me. She simply got out of the car and stood there for several seconds. Neither of us moved. Then she said quietly, "I'm not here to force you home." I didn't know what to say. She walked closer but stopped several feet away. "I came because you're my son," she said, "and because I couldn't sit in that house, wondering whether you were cold, hungry, or scared." I looked away. "You always try to control me," I whispered, my mother's eyes filled with tears. "Maybe I did," she admitted. "Maybe I held on too tightly because I was afraid of losing you." That was the first time I had ever heard her admit she could be wrong. She sat beside me on the bench. "I knew you might leave," she continued. "Not because I was spying on you. I noticed your clothes missing from the closet. I saw the money disappear from your drawer. And yesterday, when you thought I wasn't looking, you kept staring at the front door." I felt embarrassed. She had noticed everything. But instead of stopping me, she had allowed me to walk away. "Why didn't you stop me?" I asked. "Because sometimes," she said, "a person has to walk far enough to understand where home really is." Those words stayed with me. She didn't ask me to apologize. She didn't lecture me. She didn't tell me how much trouble I had caused. She simply opened her bag and handed me a sandwich. "You haven't eaten," she said. I laughed bitterly. "You came all this way just to bring me breakfast." She smiled through her tears. "I came all this way because you're my child." Something inside me broke. For the first time, I realized how much of my mother's love I had mistaken for interference. I had remembered every time she said no. I had forgotten every time she stayed awake until I came home. I remembered every argument. I forgot the nights she sat beside my bed when I was sick. I remembered feeling embarrassed when she called me repeatedly. I forgot that she only called because she was afraid something had happened to me. That morning, I told her everything. I told her I felt invisible at home. I told her I felt like my younger brother was always praised, while my mistakes were remembered. I told her I didn't know what I wanted from life, and that I was terrified of disappointing everyone. My mother listened. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she said something I will never forget. "You don't have to be perfect to be loved by me." I started crying. She pulled me into her arms, and for the first time in years, I stopped fighting her. I went home with her that morning. But things didn't magically become perfect. We still argued. We still misunderstood each other. There were still days when I wanted space. The difference was that we began talking instead of assuming. My mother learned that protecting me didn't mean controlling every decision I made. I learned that independence didn't mean pushing away everyone who loved me. Years passed. I moved away for college, found a job, and eventually built a life of my own. My mother never stopped watching over me. But she watched differently. She didn't call 10 times a day anymore. Instead, she'd send a simple message. Eat something or drive safely or sometimes just love you. I always answered then one evening. Several years after that night, I returned home unexpectedly. My mother was sitting on the porch. She looked older. Her hair had turned gray, and there were lines around her eyes that I hadn't noticed before. I sat beside her mom. I said, "Do you remember when I ran away?" She smiled. How could I forget? "I used to think you followed me because you didn't trust me." She looked at me, and now I took a deep breath. Now I realized you followed me because you trusted me enough to let me go, but loved me enough to make sure I wasn't lost. She didn't say anything, she just reached for my hand. That night, I finally understood something I had been too young to understand. Before, sometimes the people who love us don't know how to love us perfectly. Sometimes parents become afraid. Sometimes they hold on too tightly. Sometimes children become desperate to escape. But beneath all those mistakes, there can still be a love that refuses to disappear. My mother had been watching over me since the day I tried to run away. Not because she wanted to control my life, because she wanted me to know that wherever life took me, I would never have to face it completely alone. And now whenever I see my mother watching me from across the room, I don't feel trapped anymore. I feel grateful, because one day when I thought I was running away from my family, I discovered something much more important. I wasn't running away from home. I was running away from the idea that I was loved, and my mother was there to prove me wrong.